Today we're going to repair an oil leak on an oil filter housing, and while we're doing that we're also going to do the tensioners for the belts. So if you have a smell coming in through your car, the AC system, then that's going to be your valve cover gasket that needs to be replaced. However, if you're seeing oil all over your engine, that's going to be down in here. And if you look on the side of the engine, I've cleaned mine, but right down in this area you're going to see oil all over the block of the engine, and that oil will drip down and go all over hoses and other components, and oil and hoses do not mix. So this is one of those things that you want to fix as soon as you can, because it'll degrade those hoses and you'll have other system failures eventually. So I've pressure washed my car and have gotten everything cleaned off. So the first task we're going to do is we need to remove the air filter, get it out of the way, and we need to go ahead and disconnect the battery. Some say the negative terminal. I'm going to do both so that when I take off the positive from the alternator, if I accidentally hit a ground, I'm not going to get a spark or anything. Your battery compartment's in the rear right of the car. What you're going to do is simply lift up the spare tire cover and hang it up on top. And then you're going to have access to the battery compartment. You're going to need to turn both of these screws, and as you can see, they turn halfway through a simple tool called your fingers, and if they pop out, that's okay. And then what you're going to need to do is lift it up and out. To do that though, you're going to need to pull this up and out, and just the back seems to be enough, and then you can lift it up and out, exposing your battery. We're going to remove the negative cable, and that's with a 10mm. A few turns and it comes right off, and it's out of the way. And the snap cover just lifts up, and we're going to do the positive side. Now we're completely safe, no electrical to the car. Now we can take out the air filter. So as you can see, my air filter is not stock. I have the Group M air filter. So the one thing that's going to be common is you're going to want to take your mass airflow sensor and go ahead and take it out. And there's a little retaining screw right here for that. And release this and then slide it out. Your normal filters, I believe, bolt in right here, and I believe there's a third one down on the center here. Another component is going to be the airflow box. There's a pull pin right here, and then two up near the front. You'll need to lift those up and pull them out, and then this whole component will come off. Now what works well for me on these pins is to grab them with some needle nose pliers, and then use some upwards pressure here and tilt it to where you can get it up like this, and then it comes out. And all it is a shank that goes down here and spreads the bottom portion out. Now that I've removed the air filter and also the front shroud here, I need to remove the fan assembly. Now lucky for me, I don't have an automatic. So what I'm going to need to do is disconnect the two wires up here and this set of wires here, and then there's a torque screw here. It's a T25. And over on the other side, you have one of those pull tabs again. You stick a screwdriver down in the slot, and you can pry it up, and then it'll come out. Now to disconnect these, you have to pull back and sort of push forward, and then it comes right off. You can lay it to the side. This plug, there's actually two push points. If you push them both and lift up, it'll come off. And then down on the side of the radiator, or the fan, it's routed behind a little nipple. So you'll have to pull it out from behind there, and then you can just grab the whole assembly and lift it up and out of your way. So the fan assembly for a manual transmission, it just lifts up and out of the way from little grooves down in here. And then see these connectors down at the bottom? When you put it back in, you're going to want to make sure that you sort of slide it in, and then make sure it seats down in those connectors when you put it back in the car. And the ease of this for a manual is great. And for those of you that have a performance model with automatic transmission, serves you right. Because those with an automatic transmission are going to have a fan that they're going to have to pull off of the engine itself. So it's a lot more work. So let's remove our first belt. It's going to be the AC belt right here. And there's a pulley down here. Next view is going to be of this pulley underneath the car, or the tensioner. And underneath the car you're going to need a T60 Torx. And it's going to go right into here. What you're going to do is put tension on it to relieve it. Like that. And then you're going to be able to reach around and slide the belt off. While we're under here and the belt's off, may as well go ahead and replace the tensioner here. There's one center bolt that we're going to remove. And it's going to come out like any other counterclockwise. And we're going to pull the whole spring assembly out. Okay, brand new one's on. It was just a matter of tightening this one center bolt, and I tightened it to 30 foot-pounds. And then you just simply need to go ahead and remove this little peg, and you'll see if you release tension on it, that peg will fall and you can just slide it on out, and then it's ready for use. Special notes I'd say about installing it is you see that it's got a shape to it, a lip on the little peg at the bottom here, and then at the top. And it's very obvious when you're putting it back in how it sets back in and goes into little slots that are shaped exactly like these two. So this tab here, and then right there. This is a view of the new one from the top. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and remove the power steering fluid housing. We're going to undo these two bolts right here. They're 13mm. And then we're just going to lay it back over here to the side and out of our way. So now with the power steering reservoir laid to the side, and you'll notice blue tape covering the bolts. I put the bolts back in there and then just covered them so that one, reminds me where they are and I don't lose them. And so next what we're going to need to do is pull this front pulley and go ahead and get the cover off, and then I'm going to go to the tensioner below, and it's a hydraulic one, and figure out how to pull it off. Of course, before we pull it off, we're going to need to remove the belts that you see are still on the rear. So to remove the main belt, you have to pop the tops off. Just use a little bitty screwdriver and get up under the edge of the plastic cap and pop them off. Same with this one. This one's the hydraulic one, and you can't see it from here, but it's got a 8mm hex. So it's going to be a tool like that. And it seems a little unnatural, but what you do is you put it in here and you go like you're tightening it, and that'll release the pressure so that you can actually get it back out, get the belt off. So we'll see how it is to remove it. The first thing we're going to remove though is the alternator. So we're going to start with this bolt here, and we're going to go back and undo the electrical connections as well. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the alternator pulley, and this is a 16mm. Once you undo it and slide it out, you'll see that there's a dimple here. When you put the new one back on, you're going to want to make sure that it goes into the dimple right here on the alternator and seats properly. So there it is. It would be seated right there, and that's when you would tighten it. So since I have to take off the alternator, I'm going to go ahead and take off my hydraulic pulley as well. before I take off the rest of the alternator. And when the hydraulic pulley comes off, you'll notice that on the back is this shim, and this is the way it needs to go back on, with the beveled edge going inwards like this. So on the new one. So now that we have that tensioner out of the way, we're going to remove the lower alternator bolt, and that is going to be this one right down here. I've already got it started, so we're just going to remove it. Now, looking at the alternator, we're going to remove this connection. And again, I'm going to put some blue tape over it so that I remember it and don't forget it. And once we get the switch off, the electrical connector, the next thing is 17mm socket. And you'll see this plastic bolt head back here. Looks to be some sort of high strength plastic. And then on that is your positive cable. And that just slides off. Now it's time to pull out the alternator. And we should be able to just grab it with our hands and pull it out. Okay, the alternator is removed, and it should be easy, but hopefully you'll be able to see this. If you're looking up underneath the car, it's going to look about like this, and you're going to see this little nut here that's encased. You're going to see this little nut from underneath, and it's surrounded by metal to where you know that you can't get a wrench on it and turn it. So all it is the other part where the screw goes into. So the way I found to get the alternator out rather easily was, I'll show you up under the car. Looking up under the car, you're going to find that bolt right here. And if you stick a screwdriver in between, this is the housing for the power steering pump, and this is the power steering pump. So if you see that bracket, it's the bottom bolt that you have to remove off the power steering pump in our next step. But that one bolt will be coming here. So if you stick a flathead screwdriver right down in between and pry it a little bit outwards, that gives it enough enough of the pressure off of it to where you can just go up to the top and lift it off. But that's all you need to do, and then it comes off easily. Go under the car. We're so near now, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the oil filter. I have this handy little conversion tool that I bought, 36mm to 17mm. So I just used a 17mm wrench, and I'm going to break my seal on my oil filter, and I'm going to let it drain back into the engine block. And then when we take off the oil filter housing, we won't have such quite a mess. So, because most of the oil should go back down into the block. But I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up a good ways. So there we go. Should allow enough air in now to let it all soak back down. So, now that we're looking down at the power steering pump, what we're going to do is there's a bolt back here. We're going to remove that one, and then up near the front we're going to remove that one. Now that's just up under the hydraulic tensioner here, so very easy. We're going to remove those two, and then we'll go back underneath and we'll remove that bracket bolt that I showed you you're going to use for leverage to get the alternator out. So as you can see, both of these bolts have been loosened, the one in the rear and then the one in the front. And now I'm going to show you the one underneath. Underneath, and you see your steering pump. Go to the back and you'll see the bracket. And that bracket is a 13mm, and you just go ahead and remove it. Now when all of these are removed, you're going to want to have a piece of wire or something handy so that you can hang and tie up this reservoir. You don't want it to hang on the tension of the lines. You want to keep tension off of them. So we're almost ready to remove our oil filter housing. So what we're going to do though is we've got two plugs. You got one up at the top, so we're going to remove it, and you just simply push in on this metal piece and then pull it out. And then we've got one down here at the back that we're going to do. And I would label both of these. And then you're going to, in the back here, you're going to see where your Vanos line connects in. It's this piece right here, and this bolt right there where my finger is what you're going to undo so that that line is no longer connected to the housing. Now I've laid some paper towels down just in case, but it was I believe it was a 19 millimeter, and it broke pretty easily, the tension on it. So I'm just removing that Vanos line. We're going to have some oil leakage. And there's a washer in between and a washer on the nut itself. So I've got the banjo bolt, the nut, or the washer, and then the other washer. So with the Vanos, lower Vanos removed, it's now time for us to remove the oil filter housing. So we're finally where we have been trying to get to. So we've got 6 bolts, one at the bottom, down inside the recess here, right above where the alternator and the power steering pump mounted. So we've got one there, one to the right of it, 2 up above it in the middle, and up near the top we've got one to the bottom left of the connector and one to the very rear of the connector, to the right rear, and it's the only one that's recessed pretty far back. So we'll undo those, and then we should just be able to tap it right off and pull it straight on out. I now have all the bolts removed, all 6 of them. As you can see, the top 2, the middle 2, and then the bottom 2. And how did I keep track of them? They're all various lengths, so I just merely labeled top, bottom, left, right. So I'm able to keep track of them. As you can see, they're all different lengths, so that was very important. So as you can see, the area was quite dirty, and I've used a little brake cleaner to clean things up. So we'll clean her up, put her back together, and hope for the best. So now we've got everything cleaned up. A little bit of scrubbing, a little bit of towels, a little bit of air, compressed air, and you can blow it all out and get it all clean, and now it's ready to put back together. Okay, so it's back on now, the oil filter housing. It just simply sets back in, and then you tighten down your 6 bolts. And I used 16 foot-pounds. I had seen on the net places to do where they said 18 to 20, but if I'm looking at the bolt size, the bolt was a grade of 8.8, and it was an 8 millimeter by measuring the end of the shaft where the threads are, and so therefore the maximum torque value is 17, so I didn't want to exceed that or get to it, so I just put it at 16. Is to put the banjo bolt back in to the Vanos and tighten it down. As you see, I have it threaded here already. I have a washer on the inside, and I also have a washer over here on the outside, and I'm just going to finger tighten it for now. And then I use my 21 millimeter or my 19 millimeter socket, and we'll torque it. Let me check the torque value. Okay, now we have the Vanos line back on, and the torque for it is 24 foot-pounds. However, I couldn't get to it, so I put it as tight as I could, and just by feel. I don't like doing that, but hopefully that'll be okay. And then next item is to reconnect our electrical connector right here, and the one at the rear of the oil filter housing. Water pump is back in place. They were measured as 8 millimeter bolts, and they're marked with 8.8. So again, I put 16 foot-pounds of pressure. There's the front bolt, and then here's your rear bolt. And remember, up underneath is the brace. I'll show you that now. So underneath, you see the power steering pump right there. And if you look up, right in there. That is your bolt for the brace, and I did it at 16 foot-pounds. So I now have the bottom bolt in on the AC or on the alternator, and what we're going to do now is, it is a 10 millimeter, so and it's marked 8.8. So the maximum torque value is 33. So I'm going to start out at 25 and then step up to 30, and that should be my final torque. Now, before I put the AC pulley back on, which is the top one, or the not the AC but the alternator, I'm going to go ahead and put my hydraulic pulley back on, and that goes down here on the hydraulic tensioner. And remember, it has a little shim in the back, and the beveled end should be facing outwards from the bearing towards the pulley. And this is the one that takes the hex. So we're going to put that on. And we're going to tighten that as well, since it is a 10 millimeter bolt and it's stamped 8.8 on it. We're going to put that torque to 30 foot-pounds of torque. Now that pulley's back on, and we just have the AC or the alternator pulley to put on. So we'll slide it on and start threading it in. And remember, there's this little dimple here that you will need to make sure seats properly. And this bolt is as well a 10 millimeter in size, not wrench size, but in the bolt thread size. So we will also bolt this one down to 30 foot-pounds as well. The actual head size for the wrench is 16 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and get that one tightened down. Then we'll put the dust covers on both of them. Both of these tensioners are back on with their covers, and the covers just snap back on. So finally we're back over to the alternator. We had one wire which plugged in to the alternator itself. So we just push that one back in until it snaps, and then we have our positive cable. That we just merely put back on in place. And then we had the 17 millimeter head that holds it down. So we'll just put this a little bit feel by hand tightness on it, and we should be good to go. Now remember, this top is plastic, so it really should be pretty much just tight and a little after that. So now that we've got the alternator back in, it's time for us to put the power steering fluid reservoir back in place up here. So with the two bolts, we'll put those back in place. The heads are 13 millimeter, however the bolt's 8 millimeters in diameter, stamped 8.8, so I put 16 foot-pounds of torque to put them back. So now we're pretty much done. Next thing is to put our belts back on, and then to put our fan shroud back in. So if you're like me, you'll forget how the belts go, so you just draw yourself a little diagram that shows how they go, and then you put them back on. You'll have to take the hydraulic tensioner and use force to go this way with it, and that'll in turn push it back this way, and then you can slide this over it. Okay, your new belts are back on, and now it's just time to bring the fan assembly and slide it back down in here. Remember, it goes down into these little tabs, and then you will connect it with a screw at this point, and then with a little push tab over here. Once your fan shroud's back in place, remember you have two connectors. One just simply snaps in, and the other one, when you put it in, you just sort of put in this edge. See how it's got a two edges here? You just put it in, push it towards it, and pull it back, and then it'll seat itself. And that's how you get that one in. I prefer to just take this whole piece off instead of trying to take the connector off. It's just easy. So next, the intake shroud, and then for me, the Group M air intake. And then we're ready to test her out.